Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell here with attorney Stephen Jessup, and we're going to talk about long-term disability insurance claims with New York Life Insurance Company. And Stephen, this video is going to be an overview summary of kind of all the services that our firm offers, being from applications to appeals to lawsuits after an appeal is finalized, and then even lump sum buyouts that are offered by New York Life. Now, we'll touch on each of them briefly, but we do have individual videos about all of these different types of claims. So those are probably the better videos for a claimant to look at so they can get really specific about what stage they're at with their claim. But what's really unique about New York Life right now is that they kind of overnight became one of the largest group disability insurance companies. And the reason that happened was because in December of 2019, they spent $6.3 billion to buy the life and disability division of the Cigna insurance company. So that was a huge purchase that shocked all of us because of the fact that New York Life really wasn't in the group disability world. Obviously, they were one of the biggest in the entire world in life insurance. But what they said was, we're buying them, and by the third quarter of 2020, which is September 2020, which is basically when we're doing this video right now, the transition was going to be done, and we're going to take over all of the Cigna employees and bring them into New York Life. So my take is, and what I'm, well, for good and bad, that it's basically just going to be like a renaming, a rebranding per se, even though it's a brand new company, but things should stay the same. Although when you have a new company and new personalities and new management, I don't expect everything to stay exactly the same, but I think over time, in the beginning at least, we're going to start to see the same thing. A lot of the group disability insurance companies behave the same way, but let's go through a little bit of each of the dynamics in terms of the policies that are going to be offered by New York Life and applying for disability. What's an important thing that a claimant should think about when applying for disability with New York Life?
Well, this is interesting too, like you said, since they took over the group side of things. Group disability insurance is going to be so much different than an individual who may contact us on the, individual disability product. Your private disability policies, that comes with its own, nuances that we've discussed in other videos. But from a group disability side of it on the application, it's a little different than our individual ones, because generally speaking, a lot of times the person who's thinking about filing is still working. There's concerns of like, when do they stop working? They can't really control as much of what they'd like to as it relates to their work schedule and things like that. So the actual lead up to, hey, I'm applying for benefits, unless something catastrophic happens and there's a clear mark where you're not going to be able to work, there does take a lot more analysis and, kind of determining what's the best course in establishing, a disability claim for someone like that, who's going to get this, that would have been a Cigna policy, through an employer. Their road to application will be different than someone who has a private individual disability product with New York Life, without a doubt.
And so a lot of people call, and this theme goes right through from the beginning to the end, whether you're applying or on a lawsuit, and they say, like, what's your view on New York Life? What is your take? And our view at this point is going to be construed from what our view is of Cigna. Yep. And I'll go first, and then you can say what you think. Cigna is a monster. And now New York Life is going to be an even bigger monster, because they already had some disability coverage, and now they're combining that with what they have from Cigna. My take on Cigna as dealing with a big entity is like when you deal with any other company that's just gigantic. The attention to detail just doesn't exist. It's get them in, get them out. It's often a quick review. It's the bare minimum that they have to do to get by. It has traditionally been some of the most pathetic denial letters that we've seen of any disability carrier, as far as I'm concerned. Most of them look very similar in nature. It's like, take this block, take that block, and just fill in the blank. And then they have a protocol that they've trained their employees, do this, this, and that. And not a lot of thought process goes into it. It's get the medical records in, get them reviewed by our in-house doctors. Unlike other companies, New York Life has all the resources. They got their own doctors, they have their own nurses, they have their own vacation or rehab people. And the person who is initially assigned to your claim, whether it's an appeal, whether it's applying, is for the most part a paper pusher. They are going to push it to the people that they are told they have to, and whatever those people say about a decision, regardless of what your doctors say, they're 99% of the time going to adopt. And that's different than a lot of these other companies that we deal, not a lot, but some of the other companies we deal with, where they have been with the company for 10 years, 15 years, and they have the knowledge of what's needed. They know how to look at a file. They have the discretion to kind of make their own decisions. Whereas the bigger companies, New York Life, certain levels of benefit amounts, that's a big factor. It's reporting because the volume is astronomical compared to the other companies. So that being the case, what you do up front when you submit a claim, talking about application, is essential. You got to go over the top, because if you're generic, you're going to get slammed. So interested to hear what your take is on Cigna as a company and what someone should expect, especially applying, appeal, how the company is going to behave towards them.
Starting with that, I'm kind of hopeful with New York Life taking over, because we do see in carriers that do individual and group disability, such as Guardian and Standard. Historically, I always felt that they would review their group claims almost in a way they do their individual. They're better about their review process. So I would kind of hope maybe New York Life will do that. I'm not overly confident in the sense that the book of business they were doing on individual private disability policies, though big, isn't so big that they're equipped for the sheer amount of cases that they're going to get. So I do think it'll be a lot of business as usual from Cigna with a new name. And in videos and talking to clients, prospective clients, I've always said Cigna's always made me scratch my head the absolute most. Sometimes their review process makes absolutely no sense. Where most carriers, there's certain things that they're going to do. They got their steps, their protocols are going. Cigna sometimes just seems so sporadic. I've had cases that, in my opinion, I didn't think they'd get approved. Clients who didn't want to go to doctors, things like this, get approved. But then you'll submit a claim with as much information as you can. And like you said, they just push it off to a doctor. That doctor says, oh no, I think this person can do X, Y, and Z. And they just stamp that, they deny the case and pass it on to the next person. I think that's in part with Cigna's. They are so big and they have so many cases, and the workloads being what they are. As a claims person, you may just want to push through a quick denial, gets it off your desk, and now it's going to be in the appeals department problem. If the person appeals and wins, it'll come back to you, but for the most part, it's not your problem anymore. And that's how I kind of feel when I see some of these denial letters where a client will, prospective client will email or fax it to us. I read through it. I scroll down. I'm like, is this it? Am I missing a page? Are there pages missing from their analysis? And more often than not, no. You may get a 2 to 3 page denial letter, but a page and a half to 2 pages of that is the header and the form language in it. So my experience with Cigna is they're generally probably going to overlook a lot of what you're doing and sending and all that, and just trying to quickly get it done. Maybe if they deny you quick enough, you'll go back to work, especially when it comes to the short term. I think there's a higher percentage of Cigna cases that are denied during the short term process than the other carriers, from my experience in doing this. And I think that's in part as well, if we deny it during the short term, maybe the person will just go back to work. And if it doesn't get to long term, then we're not going to be the ones responsible for paying the benefits. So with Cigna, I think you are probably going to, as an insured, you have a greater likely chance of pounding your head against the wall and frustration as to what exactly the hell they're thinking and doing.
Right, and if you're New York Life, the name, and you think you're going to make a change, you're inheriting a gigantic, sloppy mess. It's like having a child who doesn't put their stuff away, doesn't bring their dishes to the sink, doesn't do anything. It's just a mess. It is not organized chaos for them. It's often disorganized, and it seems like, and maybe intentionally trained, look for one excuse to deny the claim, and that's it. And then we'll see what happens with what they do, what's going to happen on the appeal. Let's
And I
talk
think
about. Yeah, go ahead.
I think real quickly with that too, because we did the video about the regulatory settlement agreement that Cigna entered into with various states about the way they handle these claims. Ever since that happened, now it's almost like the state said you need to do X, Y, and Z when reviewing a claim. So Cigna does the bare minimum to basically, oh, check that box, check that box, check that box, here's your denial. So they will do the bare minimum, look for the absolute bare minimum to deny a claim and run with it.
So, what I wanted to shift gears into was the typical definition of disability that we see in the New York Life disability policies, which are going to continue, New York Life and Cigna in the group context. Can you talk about that and especially the change of definition and why we see so many denials come up at that stage as opposed to maybe initially?
Yeah, so your standard group disability insurance language is generally, New York Life will inherit what Cigna does more than likely, and that is, for the first 24 months, disability is if you're unable to perform the material and substantial duties of your occupation as it's performed in the national economy. And then after that 24 months, this idea, the inability to perform the material and substantial duties of any occupation. And depending on the policy itself, any occupation may mean a certain, percentage of prior, earnings as well. Like, any occupation based upon your training, education experience that'll pay you, 60% of your pre-disability earnings. Sometimes it doesn't say that. So you have 24 months of can you do your own job, just generically speaking. Then after that, this idea of any occupation. So the two times you're most likely to see a claim denial, either at the inception itself, from short-term to long-term. And mainly speaking, Cigna doesn't insure short-term disability policies. They administer them for your employer, which means they direct your employer to, yes, they're disabled, pay the benefit. And on short-term, 99% of the time, your benefit's actually paid by your employer. When it comes to long-term disability, though, then Cigna is the underwriting insurance company, so they're responsible for paying you the money. When it's coming out of their pocket, they're going to be a lot more strict and they're going to be more likely to deny. Regardless, that point isn't as big of a denials point as we see going into that 24-month review into any occupation. Because then at that point, they don't have to take into consideration what your job was, the physical demands, the cognitive demands. They have a kind of a more open playing field of showing, well, here are some jobs we think you can do, so we're going to deny you here. That any occupation review, I would say that's where we see the vast majority of denials that call us come during that time frame.
The other thing we do for a lot of claimants, a lot of people watch our videos because they're worried that they're going to get denied by New York Life. And we offer this monthly claim handling service where basically we take over every aspect of the claim and kind of avoid, review all the medical records, help with all of the claimant statements, help with the attending physician statements, prevent the disability company from calling the claimant at any time to talk about whatever they want, prevent them from randomly sending an investigator to their home to talk to them. And that gives a lot of claimants a lot of peace of mind. It also lets them know that we're keeping an eye on their medical records and that they're not saying anything that they shouldn't say. It's a relationship when it was with Cigna and we've had with New York Life for years on other claims that they kind of appreciate because now they're in a business-to-business relationship with us, which is good because we're always straightforward with them. They know what they can ask for and what they can't ask for, and it takes a lot of pressure off the claimant. So a lot of claimants, especially with these group disability policies, know that they can find the little tiniest thing and deny them, and then you go through this whole appeal process and then possibly litigation, and it can set you back months to years of not having benefits. So the idea is to try to do everything we can to protect the benefits, guide you and coach you with all of your medical visits so that you know how to tell your doctor how to fill out your forms, how to put things in the medical records to avoid all the pitfalls. And it's a unique thing that we do, but we're happy to discuss that further with you should you be interested in that. The last thing, Stephen, is your experience of litigating with Cigna. I know you've litigated hundreds, if not thousands, of lawsuits against them. And, we have videos specific about litigating claims against New York Life, against Cigna. What is that process like? And not going into the standard review and things like that, but how long does that take, and what is a resolution usually like? Because that's what I find a lot of people want to know. How long is this going to take, and when am I going to get my benefits?
Yeah, because if you spend any time on our website, you kind of know what to expect, what's going to happen in court, standard of reviews, all that type of stuff. So from a practical standpoint, and generally when I'm speaking to clients, I always like to be practical about it. There's the way the law works, there's the way of feelings of what should be fair, that isn't fair, and then there's the reality of a situation and how you can look at it and be prepared for it. So generally, you file a lawsuit. This is federal jurisdiction on these employer-provided policies. The time frame with which the case will move up into a motion for a judge to make a decision on, that really depends on the individual judge. But generally speaking, that can be as short as 6 months from the date of filing out to 2 years. If you are going to go to have a judge make a decision. Now, Cigna, and I'm sure New York Life, since they're keeping all the same people, will continue to act as most insurance companies will. And since courts are going to mandate mediation, which is where they want the parties to come together and try to find a resolution without taking it all the way to a final motion, you're going to have a mediation date. Generally speaking, Cigna likes to see if they can't resolve a case prior to the mediation. It saves time, it saves money. We have a good relationship, not only with their in-house counsel, just from doing this for so long, but also the outside counsel that they tend to hire. So we usually, once the case is filed, whether we're getting courtesy copy of the complaints out to the defense counsel, but as soon as they have an answer, so that's when the New York Life is going to file their response to your complaint, usually start to even open up lines and dialogue with negotiating with the insurance company on it. So you can expect that while it's filed, you're not going to be deposed. They're not going to request updated medical. They're not going to video surveil you. This is usually then just a lot of paperwork and filing for the attorneys. There is going to be discussions about resolutions and settlements. My experience with Cigna is that's the route they like to take. Even in situations where we can analyze a case and say they have a greater than likely chance of prevailing in court, they are still going to be in a position to want to discuss, lump sum settlements on the case. And generally speaking, that could happen, as soon as 6 months from the filing of the lawsuit. It can really depend, though, on the case, the facts, the circumstances, and that. But I always tell people the only way an insurance company is truly going to win, and you will see absolutely nothing from this, is if you don't fight. And they're banking on the fact and hoping that you don't want to put up that fight.
Stephen, going along what you were just saying, I don't see New York Life changing the way in which they're going to handle things and review lawsuits and litigations, and I still think there's going to be settlement offers and things of that nature. Cigna's been aggressive in the way they handle their cases. I don't see it getting any lighter with New York Life because we have a history of how New York Life's always been, and they've been relatively aggressive in sticking to their guns and litigating their position. So I don't see that changing. In summary of this, because we just tried to scratch the surface, and you and I could talk for hours and hours. So what we want to offer is if you have a claim, no matter where you're at, go ahead and get us a copy of your policy, your denial letter. If you've been denied, contact Stephen or myself, or we will always provide you with an initial free consultation. We'll discuss the claim with you, tell you the pros, the cons, where we think this is going to go. We're going to be super practical with you and just tell you how it is. You may not love everything we say. You may love what we say, but just give you the facts. Our goal is to maximize your policy for you and get you paid. The other thing we really want you to do is we want you to spend some time on our website. Search New York Life. Search Cigna in this case, because we have a 25-year history of information out there about Cigna, which is going to be inherited by New York Life. And you're going to get a flavor for cases that have been resolved by Cigna and through the courts, opinions that have been written, reviews from other people that have had Cigna policies, questions and answers that all of our lawyers have answered from people that came to our website. And you're really going to put yourself in the best position to know what to expect when dealing with New York Life and dealing with a disability insurance claim in general. And that's all part of this process to get you the best chance to get approved. So no matter where you live in the country, we're happy to offer our services to you and work with you. We'll be here when you need us, and we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you.